Morning, church family. Sue Buckwalter here. Time for our children's message, children's lesson. So if you're at home viewing online, gather up your family members and dial in and see what the Lord has to speak to you about today. Also, if you're in church here, just sit up straight and gather up your thoughts and dial in and see what the Lord has to speak to you about today. Well, today I want to start by reading a Bible story that's very familiar to a lot of us. And it is found in Matthew chapter 14, verses 22 to 32. Now, just before this story happened, Jesus had just fed the 5,000, so that was a really big deal. He fed all these people. There were people everywhere all over the countryside where he had been preaching, and so that happened just ahead of this story. So immediately after this, Jesus insisted that the disciples get back in the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, Jesus went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell, and he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. So they're out in the middle of this lake very early in the morning. So it was at about 3 o'clock in the morning, or the fourth watch of the night, as some translations say. Jesus came toward them. So they're fighting these waves. Jesus comes walking toward them on the water. Pretty cool. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. And in their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" So they didn't even recognize that was Jesus. They thought it was a ghost walking on the water. But Jesus spoke to them at once, and he said, "Do not be afraid, and take courage. I am here." Well, Peter then called out to him and said, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you and walk on the water." Well, Jesus said, "Yes, come." And so Peter went over the side of the boat, and he walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw the strong winds and the waves, he was terrified and began to sink and shouted out, "Save me, Lord!" Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped, and the disciples worshiped him and said, "You really are the Son of God." So, wow, pretty cool story. And I'm going to do a little illustration here to kind of demonstrate faith. So, ask yourself this question. Have any of you ever walked on water? Have you ever tried to walk on water? And frozen water doesn't count. So, if your pond is frozen and you walk on that, doesn't count. But most of us, all of us, should be able to say, nope, we can't walk on water. We're not Jesus, and we're not even Peter, who tried to walk on the water with Jesus. So, in my experiment, I'm going to show you a couple of things here. So, you notice this glass is full of water, right? Now, I have some paper clips here. And how many of you think that these paper clips will float if I put them in the water? Think about that for a second. Do you think they would float? Well, let's see. All right, I'm going to try this big paper clip. Nope. Sinks right down, doesn't it? Let me try one more. Maybe this one will work. Nope. I wonder if I put like a littler one in. You know, this one's like kind of tiny. Let me see what happens if I put that in there. Nope. Sinks just like that, right? Well, now I have a special paper clip here. This is just like the regular paper clips. I just bent it straight up like this, so it's like a little holder. So watch what happens when I use the holder to put the paper clips in here. And imagine that this holder is like Jesus in our lives, and we're this paper clip. Now, I'm going to try to do this with a steady hand, but if it's not steady, it's just going to slide right in. So watch. Let me see if I can do this with a right steady hand here. All right, so I'm just placing our lives on this holder, which we're going to call Jesus. Wow. Oops. See, I bumped it. Nope. Let me try it one more time. Okay. You got to do it just right and steady. Wow, look at that. It's floating. If you can't see it on the camera, it's floating right nicely. I'm going to try to put a couple more on here so it might help you to see it a little bit better. The littler ones stay on a little bit easier. Now these are the same paper clips I just used, and they're floating now, aren't they? You see, Jesus helps us to be able to accomplish the impossible. So this holder that represents Jesus and these paper clips represent us. So we, in our lives on our own, we can't do the impossible. But when we have Jesus in our life and we put our faith in him, we can do things that we never imagined we could do. Now, can we still walk on water? Probably not going to walk on water anytime soon. But if we have faith, God can help us to do some really big things, some things that might be super hard to do. But we have to be aware of the doubts that can creep in. Because remember what happened to Peter. He got out there and he was like, yeah, Jesus, I'm coming. And he's walking on that water. And then what did he do? He took his eyes off of Jesus and he looked around and he saw the storm and the big waves. And he was like, oh my gosh, now I'm in trouble. And he started to sink. And so he let doubts come in, and it totally ruined what was going on between Peter and Jesus. So I have this Dawn dish detergent, and I'm going to show you what this is like on this experiment here. So these paper clips are floating along nicely, and I'm just going to put a little bit of dish detergent on these and watch what happens. Hopefully you can see this. They immediately sank, and I didn't even use that much. So imagine that this dish detergent was the doubt that we can have in our lives. It can take us right out of and knock our faith out when we have doubt. And, you know, boys and girls, this was a nice little science experiment with surface tension. The reason those floated was because this broke the surface tension of the water, which allowed the paper clips to float. So that's the hack on that one. But boys and girls, what I want you to get from this lesson are three things to remember. We will find ourselves in storms sometime in life. Maybe it's not happening right now to you. Maybe someday it will happen. Maybe you break an arm or a leg, and man, that's a lot of pain, and you have to go through suffering from that. Or maybe you have a friend that doesn't want to be a friend anymore, or something happens at school. Maybe you got bullied, or who knows? There's a lot of times where we're going to go through some storms. And you know what? The storms never come at the most convenient times. The disciples found out very quickly in the middle of the night, about 3 a.m, that a storm that can come up so quickly, and it can be very scary. And they found out that they were in survival mode when that storm came upon them. And a lot of people are in survival mode when storms happen in their lives. But they can rely on Jesus. We can all rely on Jesus when those storms come. And believe me, they will come. And you can rely on Jesus to give you that strength to get through those storms. The second thing I want you to remember is that Jesus may show up in unexpected ways. Remember, the disciples in the stories thought that Jesus was a ghost. When he was coming toward them, they were like, oh my gosh, it's a ghost. But it turned out it was just Jesus. When they recognized that it was Jesus, then their fears were put aside. And the other thing that I love in this story is that Jesus told them, do not fear. He said, do not fear, I am here. When he said, I am here and do not be afraid, man, that should make all the difference to us in this world. When we have troubles or bad times come upon us, we got to remember, don't fear, because Jesus is going to be with us through it all. So boys and girls, remember, your church family loves you. We miss seeing everybody all at the same time, at the same place. So just know that we're all thinking about you all. And just remember, place your trust in God, put your faith in God, and he's not going to let you down. All right, all for now. Bye.